The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining. We got a good webinar going on today. The topic is how top travel apps increase booking and revenue. Before we get started, a couple housekeeping items. First, we definitely encourage participation, so please ask questions in the GoToWebinar panel. If you type in questions there, we'll definitely get to them at the end. I might also be chiming in kind of throughout and make sure that your questions are answered, but we'll definitely save some time at the end to answer the questions. And finally, we will be sharing the slides and the recording afterwards. Give us about 24 hours to make sure the video's rendered and posted online, but we'll be sending out an email as a follow-up to make sure that you guys can see this. So don't worry about scrambling down notes. We'll send it your way. So yeah, we got a great presentation today. So I'm going to quickly throw it over to the presenters. We have Red and Felipe from Branch and Apptentive, and we can get started.
Hey everybody, this is Felipe from Branch. I'm a partner growth manager here, so what that means in Branch terms is I'm an account executive for our major partners. Today's topic, as most of you know, I hope, is how to increase mobile engagement and bookings and revenue for travel apps. So today I'm accompanied by Red from Apptentive, who can provide an intro as well.
Hello, everybody, and happy Hump Day. This is Red from Apptentive. My background here has been really focused on partnerships and really helping our customers for the past 5 years. And I think one of the things that I think is really important today is we're talking about the travel category. Is historically we've been really focused on helping them, but we've never really shared our insights and secrets until today. So if you're tuned in and you're potentially in another tab, cue on in, back and forth between what else you're doing today during the webinar, and excited to get started. Just as a little bit of background about Apptentive, our focus as a business is really about communication. So a lot of companies talk about how they want to create loyalty with their customers. Our approach is really about helping the world's biggest brands create loyalty through listening, pulling customers closer to them and understanding what customers want. We've generated millions of conversations on billions of devices worldwide. And our goal today is to share just a little bit more about what we've done for the travel category to take loyalty over the top and to keep customers coming back to your brand for more. And with that, I'll reintroduce Branch and excited to get started with everybody.
Thanks for that, Red. So everybody, we have an introduction to Branch here as well. So at its core, Branch is a deep linking platform, and our goal is to help our partners, big and small, large enterprises as well as very small early stage startups, unify their mobile experiences and mobile measurement. And so there are tons of channels that you're trying to leverage today to drive users to your app. We make sure that the user experience is consistent for every user, and that valuable attribution data is passed in back to your business. And so as you can see here, these are some of the channels that we support. We've helped a lot of big brands drive users to the app from a multitude of channels. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're going to cover today. So a bit of an agenda here. The first thing we're going to start with is a high-level overview of the travel industry and where it's headed in the mobile space right now. And then following up with that will be how to optimize your marketing channels to drive app growth and engagement. From there, I'll pass it back over to Red, who's going to be talking about using feedback to improve the user experience. And then we'll both discuss measuring the success of your marketing campaign. And then, as Evan mentioned at the beginning, we'll have a Q&A with the speakers based on the questions that you guys write into us during the discussion. So let's set the context here. So we live in an increasingly mobile world. That's why we're all here in this webinar today. 75% of all digital media time is spent on mobile. 38% of all US e-commerce sales are also done on mobile. And then as of 2017, $245 billion in mobile has been generated in mobile revenue, or is expected to be generated in mobile revenue. So obviously, mobile is trending up, and travel companies, big and small, are investing very heavily in the space. And then as part of mobile, apps are a critical component of it. 85% of all mobile media time is spent in the apps, and then 55% of mobile commerce is done in the app. So you can see that the apps have taken over mobile web in terms of transactions by users. And this is largely because conversions in the app, the conversion rate in the app is much higher, 3x on average compared to the mobile websites. Here we have a chart from Crunchbase. It's a little overview of how VC funding for travel apps has trended over the years. You can see in 2015 there was a massive boost, and then a slight drop overall in 2016. But don't be fooled. That was just Airbnb, who had a massive round of funding in 2015 and went down. But as you can see, for the smaller travel apps, it's trending very high for 2016 and beyond. And then World Business Review has this quote here based on some research that they've done, that mobile is the next major battleground for revenue and customer engagement for travel brands. That's what we're here to talk about, and so we'll get to it. Two major brands that I'm sure most of you recognize. I think we may have some folks from Hotwire on the call based on the RSVP, but what they've told the media is that over 50% of all of their bookings are happening on mobile, both web and app. And then Marriott has a very, very impressive $1.7 billion in annual bookings just through the app alone. So again, you guys can see that apps are really trending up for the travel space.
Now,
now we have a quick poll. I'm going to pass it over to Red for it.
So yeah, thank you. And as we talk about revenue generation, I mean, yes, all of us are talking about mobile, but we shouldn't forget the web. We shouldn't forget mobile web. So we have a quick poll for everybody. If you're in another tab, if you're cruising your Gmail or Outlook right now, please bring your eyes back to the webinar. Take the next 5 seconds and think about this. By 2020, which channel do you expect to drive the most revenue for your business? Is it the mobile app? Is it the mobile web? Is it desktop, traditional web? Or do you have no clue? Now, it's okay to say, I don't know. But if you're on this mobile webinar right now, we're hoping that it could be the mobile app. And we believe, based on the numbers we see from Hotwire, from Marriott, from Expedia, that the mobile app is showing itself as a formidable future force for driving revenue. So take a moment, come to the screen, take this quick poll. And for the next 5 seconds, I won't say anything. Think, which one would you choose? Okay, now that the poll's been completed, I'm going to pass it back to Branch to continue on with the discussion. Thank you so much for everybody who participated in that poll.
Yeah, and just to cover some of the results of the poll, it seems like 48% of the attendees think that the mobile app will be where they drive the most revenue to their business from, followed by mobile web and then desktop. So obviously, mobile seems to be a big focus for everyone here with us today, and hopefully we can help you guys continue that focus in your efforts to optimize mobile.
Sorry guys, it looks like we lost the presenter screen really quickly. Let us try to get this back. There we go. And we are back. Sorry about that.
All right, sorry about that, guys. So first topic on the agenda is going to be app promotion and engagement from marketing emails. So I personally have spoken to a lot of travel brands and e-commerce brands, and email has definitely been the main re-engagement channel for the loyal users. So we're going to cover this a little bit and how emails today behave with your app and how you can leverage them best. So number one issue with email on mobile is that 100% of emails open to the mobile web. Simply, mobile apps from email is broken because users can't be routed to apps with their current email providers. And so this is what the experience looks like for a user. They go into Gmail or Apple Mail, either on iOS or Android, and whether they have the app or not, they are going to the mobile web. And why is this a problem? The mobile web has lower conversions than the mobile app. And if it's a loyal user who's already signed in to the mobile app with their credit card information, it's really not the quickest path to purchase for you or for the user. And so it leads to lower engagement and conversions for the travel app. And also, more importantly, perhaps, a worse user experience for the end user. So like I said, apps are converting much better than mobile web. In general, we see 120% better, and then app users are 2.5 times more engaged compared to mWeb. So this would be the ideal user flow for a travel company that is focused on driving users to their app. If they do have the app and click on an email, we have an example from Southwest here, then they should go to the app. And then if they don't have the app, they should fall back to the mobile web. So although this isn't a travel example, I think it's a really good mobile-first brand that shows how critical email to app deep linking can be for their business. So Instacart is one of Branch's partners, and prior to deep linking from email to app, they had a 1% click to purchase rate from email. And now that they're sending users from email to app, they have a 6% click to order rate. So that's an incredible ramp up of 600%. And it's just about optimizing your channels for the mobile world. So again, here a number of other brands have seen success with email to app. Jack Threads is also one of them, with a 21% increase in revenue per email. And we've seen it across other brands too, like Tradesy, Seamless, Grubhub. So definitely something that email marketers are more focused on today. So that covers the email to app experience. And I want to take a quick step back and just mention that the channels that I'm going to be focusing on today are the organic channels. We're not going to cover paid today. Organic is very important to travel in general, and it can also be applied to both big and small companies, given varying budgets. And so there are a lot of ways for you to engage and acquire users just using your owned channels rather than paying for display ads and whatnot. And so the next channel that I'm going to be covering is mobile web, which is the website you own and can leverage to drive users to your mobile app. So here we have a picture of George Corbin, who's Vice President of Digital at Marriott, and he speaks a little bit about this. So the owned channels, including website and email, remains an effective acquisition channel for us to reach people on our list with very targeted messages intended to drive downloads and get people to complete trials. And so, as you can see, Marriott is leveraging their own channels to drive users to the app, and it's something that has worked very well for them. However, it's not something that every company in the travel space is doing, and there's a lot of room for improvement for a lot of companies that are trying to go into a mobile-first mentality. And so here I have an example of Hotwire and their current banner experience. So as you can see on the left, they have a smart banner at the top of the mobile website, a call to action that's generic for all users. And when you click the download banner from this Miami hotels page, you're taken to the App Store. And then, unfortunately, the context of the user, that Miami page that they were looking at on mobile web is not passed in through install. And so the user ends up on the generic app homepage rather than the same Miami hotel that they were browsing on the web. And so again, preserving that user context from web to app is super important, just like it is from email. So you have the quickest path to purchase and the best user experience. So in an ideal world, what you would have is, here's an example with Marriott. This actually isn't live, but something that I've mocked up, but as an example. So deep linking a user through install, we've seen has driven much higher engagement and activation post-install, as well as retention rates. So we have a custom banner on the top of the Marriott page here that if a user clicks open and installs the app, they're deep linked to the same New York City hotels that they were browsing on web. And so this is known as deferred deep linking, something that Branch is very focused on, but a lot of other deep linking partners provide. And something to think about when you're acquiring users from any channel, not just mobile web. One thing I wanted to touch on here for the more technical folks in the room is the importance of universal links in the modern mobile world. So you want to make sure that if a user does have your app installed, that if they click a call to action on your website or wherever it be, that they're taken immediately to the app and not to the App Store. And so over here you can see that when I land on Hotwire, I click download, I go to the App Store even though I already have the app installed, and then end up in the generic app homepage. And so again, the ideal user flow here is what we have with Airbnb, which is the user is browsing a particular page on Airbnb.com, they click install or open on the banner, and they go to the same exact page in the app because they already have it installed. So Jet.com was one of the early adopters of Branch and deep linking from web to app, and they've seen some amazing results from our Journeys banners, which are dynamic call to actions on web to drive users to the mobile app. And so they've seen that users that have installed the app from these banners are having a 7x increase in in-app purchase rate compared to users that came in organically. They also saw this 3x increase in daily downloads compared to the generic iOS banner that they had previously. So this is just to highlight the importance of having these call to actions be personalized to users and make sure that it also fits your brand and isn't something that isn't targeted to the audience that you're trying to engage. Cool. And to continue on to the organic channel space, we're talking a little bit about sharing and referrals next. This is something that for travel has always been part of the strategy, I think. Even just in the desktop days, referring friends to flights and to deals and to memberships has always been part of the travel industry. And so I'm going to touch on how this converts to the mobile space. So I have just two examples from Airbnb who uses Branch across a number of channels. So what they allow users to do is share content from within the mobile app out to friends via any channel, so SMS, email, etc. And then what the flow looks like after the user clicks that link in SMS is if they have the app, they go directly to that. If they don't have the app, then they go to the mobile web. So you always want to make sure to give a contextual experience for the user. Then the next example is a referral program. A lot of you have probably seen this with Uber or Instacart, a number of other apps. Airbnb gives kind of a two-sided incentivized referral program where if you give a friend $40 and they install the app or sign up, then you get $20 back. Just another way to increase virality and make sure to give your users incentive to share out with their friends. And although volume for these sorts of features are quite low, the quality of the users that are coming in, because it's from a personal referral, is very high. So the retention rates for these users tend to be much better. And with that, that concludes my topics from Branch. Passing it over to Red.
All right, and thank you. Great opportunity to understand a little bit more about how to make the experience better for the customer as they start to engage more with the app. But here's something that I think is very important for everybody to understand, and this is the first time we've actually shared this about the travel category specifically, is that historically within travel, it's been very customer oriented. The amount of money and time these brands would spend on the customer to make sure that they were happy is very, very influential in terms of the direction the app goes. The problem is, one of the things we want to focus on is a lot of these brands miss the mark when it comes to being proactive versus reactive. So let me explain what I mean by that. If you're in another tab right now, I urge you, come back into the screen and let me show you something that will blow your minds, especially if you're the kind of person who thinks that loyalty comes from spending marketing dollars on customers. So let's talk about this in a little bit more depth. But in order to do that, I need to be able to switch the slides. If I can get the presentation mode back to me, or if you can progress to the next slide, that would be helpful. Perfect. So as far as the conversation goes, one of the things that we've discovered, and this came a few years ago, was the fact that customers believe you do not care about them, right? If you want to know why customers stop using your product or go to another brand, it's because they ultimately believe you do not care about them. Now, I know we quickly just lost the screen in the webinar, and we'll be coming back to bring that up for just a moment. But let's talk about those numbers. Nearly 70% of your customers do not think you care about them, and they're going to go ahead and they're going to go to a competitor brand. Now, let's talk about this from a different perspective. Okay, my customers don't think we care about them, but they're also not going to tell you why they don't care. So let's talk about an example, right? If you're an airline and they just walked in and they're going to try to decide on which airline they're going to spend money with, or if you're a travel company, if you're waiting for them to come to you when there's a problem, 96% of the time they will not come to you. They're going to just walk out that door. So if you have a ticketing counter and you're smiling, waiting for people to come to you to service them, they're not going to come to you. They're just going to go to the company that's been proactive. They're going to leave and they're never going to tell you why. So it's like a double-edged sword. It's a lose-lose situation. They leave because they don't think you care, and they don't care enough to tell you why. So this is why we're doing what we're doing. And if you don't believe us, look at the numbers. There has been a steady decline over the past 17 years that have shown that the overall effectiveness of email surveys, of phone surveys, even of the most recent push notifications, everything is on the decline. The only thing that we've seen go up and up and continue to go up is when you're proactive and mindful about the customer experience. So when you talk about communicating with customers, whether they're in the customer journey in the app or even on the web, it is a much more powerful thing to be proactive and say, hey, I'm here to help you right now, than to tell a customer, hey, if you need our help, you come find us. You make the effort, and then follow up a week or two later to find out how their experience was. It's very disconnected, and if you're doing this right now, you're missing a huge opportunity for revenue and growth. And if you don't believe me, let's continue going down the path of explaining why. So for starters, this is the hypotheses that we operate on. If you give the customer the opportunity to talk to you, to give you feedback, and you're proactive about it, they are 4 times as likely to continue using your app 3 months from now. So if you're Frontier Airlines, or if you're Alaska Airlines, or you're Expedia, and you're trying to drive loyalty, the #1 problem you're going to run into is if you spend money on trying to give them discount after discount, they have found that discounts do not drive loyalty. What drives it is the customer having the opinion and the idea to tell you where they think the problem is and proactively explain to you, hey, I'm having issues with this app. Can you fix this for me? Or I think you need to do this in order for me to have an improved experience. The minute you give customers the opportunity to do that is the minute you have a real relationship, right? If you're on your first date with a customer and you spend most of your time talking, good luck getting a second date. So let's talk a little bit more about what not to do on your first date with customers. This is a big no-no on the left. Everyone knows about this, especially with the 10.3 update that says we're going to help you just find how to get feedback in the app from customers a little bit better. This is not something you should be doing. If someone's trying to calculate on a calculator and it says rate us right now or no thanks, all they are showing the customers they care about a rating, not the usage of the app. Or if you're Delta, and I feel bad calling you out about this, but if you're asking a customer who's trying to buy a ticket in the middle of their experience that you want to send them this long survey about net promoter score, who is that really for? Is it for the customer? Well, it can't be, because clearly you're interrupting the experience. So definitely do not do this. It may be appropriate on the web historically, but why do you think people are spending more money on mobile? It's because it's less annoying and it's more seamless and it's always there for you. Surveys like this are not supposed to be in front of the customer experience. And then finally, getting cute with emojis. I get it, companies are doing it and it's working. We've seen it work for CNN Money, we've seen it work for news apps, but in the travel industry, it's very problematic if you overload the customer with cuteness, especially again when they're in the middle of an operation or their customer journey. So let's give these an X and move on. Now let's talk about what to do. A good example is TripIt. We give them a high five and a lot of love for first putting the customer's love at the beginning of the journey. They always like to ask, do you love the TripIt app first? You want to know what bucket your customer is in before you ask them to do something, especially if you want them to give feedback or better yet, to give you 5 stars in the App Store. So for TripIt, good move in terms of pre-qualification. Once you know they love you, that is the appropriate time to go in and ask them for feedback, whether it's publicly or privately. And then of course, IHG, always having a place in the app where the customer can go to give you feedback is another route you can go, where either you're proactive if they click on no and they say, I don't love you, they have a place right then and there that says, you don't love us, well then tell us why. It's like saying to somebody, you don't love us, and then when they say no, you walk away. How does that show them you care? With IHG, they get another high five, happy cats all around. These are things you can do, these are things you can do on your own, and these are things we can help you do as well. Now let's go into a little bit more detail about other ways you can give customers a proactive treatment to drive their loyalty. We're not talking about long in-app surveys. We're talking about very short native approaches to giving the customer a chance to give you their opinion. How are we doing right now? Do not use a web-based survey technology, especially with the load times. If they're offline or potentially in the middle of the air, on an airline specifically, they don't have internet connection. Or if they do with GoGo, they might not have an internet connection. That's a joke, by the way. But when we're talking about the specificity of getting customers a positive in-app survey experience, you want to focus on native surveys and keeping it short. They only have 1 thumb or maybe 2 to type with. So asking them 23 questions, that's not appropriate. Next up is looking at what other brands are doing, right? A lot of times you want to see inspiration. We've already quoted George earlier with the branch presentation. Let's give him a little bit more credit. They pride themselves on the volume survey responses they get every single month and how that's used to drive their roadmap. If you do not have pride in the volume of survey feedback and the volume of qualitative feedback that's driving your roadmap, well then, how are you driving your roadmap? What data do you have that's informing you about what customers really want? Because quantitative analytics is quantitative, but these are not users, these are people. They have an opinion. And when it's not a good one, it most likely will end up in the App Store if you don't have an alternative inside the app. So I love to say, be like Marriott. Get proud of what feedback you have. Use that feedback as part of your arsenal or insurance to make sure you're providing your customers with the best possible app experience based on what they want. And then obviously, you should have some place in your app where they can give feedback. Either it's a phone call or an email or something. Just let the customers know they can always get a hold of you, right? Just like Alaska Listens. There's always a place for a customer to give feedback and provide you with intelligence as to where they think you should go as a business. Now, we talk about loyalty. We talk about what makes the sense for the customer, but now it's time to talk a little bit more about what else you could do to be proactive that doesn't involve feedback. And that's where the real-time in-app communication is key. So right now you're in the middle of a webinar and you're listening to us and you're trying to understand, well, what happens if this webinar shuts off? What happens if this audio feed just dies right now? And I don't tell you why it happened. You're just gonna get confused and you're not gonna come back. A lot of airlines have issues. A lot of travel apps have issues when it comes to overload, or maybe there's maintenance mode. If you don't give your customers a proactive heads up about what's coming, rest assured they will be very upset, and they most likely will go find someone who doesn't do this to them. So be aware if there's crashes, or if there's problems, or if you release a new version of the app that's fixed the problem. Be proactive and let the customer know rather than just assuming they do. Because we all know the adage about assumptions, right? Okay, so let's talk about leveraging the feedback to improve the customer experience. You already understand what you need to do, but again, we need to drill into why you need to do it. 97% of customers will become more loyal if they think you're going to implement their feedback. Everybody has that moment where like, hey, you see that new feature in Google? That was my idea. Or hey, look what Facebook just did. That was my idea. Well, the travel industry is the same exact thing. They might be an older industry, but man, they listen and they implement quickly. Just take a look at the leading airlines in terms of what they've done with their apps. And you know why they're doing it? It's because loyalty is the thing that will drive their business. And that loyalty is the customer relationship. Everybody should know this. Customer relationships is the last competitive advantage your brand will ever have against a competitor. You might screw up every day for a week, but if you've been great to that customer historically, and if you've shown them that you're in it for the long term, they'll be forgiving and they'll let it go. It's the brands that typically take advantage of the customers that end up owing a lot in terms of operational cost and discounts, and then end up losing that customer. That's why paying for loyalty doesn't work, because you can't buy somebody's love. You can only buy the short-term experience, but then they're gonna find someone who really does love them. And that's your competitor if it's not you. Here's a good example, IHG. Just like Marriott, they prided themselves on the idea that they can get feedback. Now, this is a little bit of a shout out to us, to Apptentive, but every brand should be doing this, whether or not you're using us, is the idea of giving customers routes. Now, here's a good story, a classic one that happened with IHG. Customer had a bad experience, they opened up the app, they found a way to get in touch with IHG in the app, and then they left to go find a booking somewhere else. You know why they wanted to go somewhere else? Because they felt like someone at IHG wasn't there to help them in the physical experience. But digitally, someone was there. They picked up the phone, they got in touch with this customer. Within hours, the customer went from wanting to book somewhere else to coming back and being an IHG customer for life. Your digital property can be more powerful than what the person can do at the waiting desk at the actual hotel. Customers expect to just walk past it and check in now with their phone, just using the phone as the key card. Your digital property is in the pockets of your customers. It is the closest thing you can be to having a relationship. Now, if you have any questions about this so far, please ask your questions in the panel, because we're gonna get to a point where we can address those questions. And obviously, if you have questions about Marriott or IHG, this is the first time we've been able to open up and share some of those experiences with you. Now let's continue on and talk a little bit more about the results. Again, being data-driven, this isn't supposed to be crunchy oatmeal-y. This is real facts, real data. The more feedback they got, the more bookings they were able to have over the years. Now I'm talking about a 2x increase in bookings. Take a moment, take a deep breath, and pretend that you could walk up to your CEO and say, hey, I doubled our bookings last year because our customers love us more. It's that simple. I know it sounds like really overwhelming, but you have to think about it. We're not telling you you need to drive costs for customer care by opening up a whole new phone screening channel. We're asking you just to survey your customers, get their feedback proactively, and use that data to make better decisions rather than guessing what the quantitative metrics have to say. Now think about measuring success, right? I just told you what to do and I told you why to do it. But let's actually talk about the why, right? Analytics and data will always tell you what's happening. You probably have some analytics and data in your app, and branch will provide some more analytics about where customers prefer to go. But if you don't know why they're choosing your mobile app over the web experience, well, how can you convince them to go to the mobile app? You need to ask them. And I'm telling you, that email survey will not cut it. If you're a company like Expedia and you're trying to book in a hotel stay, there are around 21 surveys you might face from the beginning of the customer journey through the end. And that includes the hotel surveys, Expedia surveys, and different teams trying to get your attention. That's a little bit of survey fatigue. I'm not suggesting you go that hardcore. There's an easier solution to understanding the why. And a lot of the tactics that I'm sharing with you are being used by major travel apps. So bear in mind, you might understand what's happening with your customers analytically, but if you don't know why it's happening, I'll give you a good experience example. Somebody just bought a ticket on Alaska Airlines. Does that mean the customer loves Alaska Airlines now? Well, what if you ask them, do you love Alaska Airlines? On average, with all these questions we ask, when we say, do you love this app? 40% of customers on average to 35% say no. Whoa. So somebody just bought a ticket, they spent money with us, but 35% of those people will say they don't love you. What if they could tell you why? Right? You don't think they're gonna buy another ticket if they don't love you. And if you don't have that data, you will not be able to figure out how to get them to buy that next ticket. So I'm just telling you right now, missed opportunity. If you're just popping up a ratings prompt when someone buys a ticket, be careful, because 30% of those people will not be buying a ticket again, especially if you don't have the data to convince them the second time around. So let's just end here with some KPIs that I think you can put up on a whiteboard. And if you do these, you will have a golden cape at the end of the year to go to your CEO and say, I did a great job for mobile or the web. Look at the bookings, look at the loyalty. If you can calculate your ARPU and then get to your LTV, that's your lifetime value of a customer, you will see by implementing a proactive strategy around getting feedback, as well as being smarter about deep linking and linking correctly for the customer journey, more people will book and more customers will be loyal to you, to your brand. That will give you the competitive edge you need. Not bribing them, but actually improving the experience by finding out what they think the improvement should be. And on the flip side, please understand that if you put proactive communication in front of the customer, they will complain less. Everybody knows this, and if you don't, I will repeat it. If you put a phone call button on every single page of your app, call volume will go down. If you put a place in your app where customers can come give you feedback, volume will go down. So think about this. Imagine going to your ops team or going to customer relationships and saying, hey, I know it's $17 a call. What if we can reduce that by 1%? So at this point, it's 10:38 Seattle time. I want to focus on making sure that we can give you the best answers to your questions. So I'll leave you with this before we jump into questions. Your customers want to love you. And if you're working at a brand, it's likely you love your customers too. But like any relationship, if you don't put listening first, you're missing a huge opportunity to increase revenue. And more importantly, forget revenue. It's making the customer truly fall in love with what you're working every day at. You're trying to create something special for your customers. Give them a voice, and I guarantee you're gonna have a much better time with your job, and you're gonna love what you do that much more. So with that, let's bring Branch and Apptentive back together, and let's start talking about the questions that you have, because I've been talking way too much for a company that likes to listen.
Awesome. Red, Felipe, thank you so much. Really valuable content. Love the examples you guys threw in, and the stats were definitely pretty impressive on how people can improve their apps. So yeah, as a reminder for the people that might have logged in a little bit late, we are taking questions. The best way is to actually type your questions into the GoToWebinar panel, and we'll make sure to get to them. If for some reason we cannot get to all of them, we will always be sure to follow up. So just please type your questions in, and I will get to them and ask them to our panelists. So I guess the first one here, Red, it looks like it's for you. Excuse me, is asking for the Net Promoter Score enough to drive loyalty? We saw in the Delta example for surveying in the app, and we do that on the web, but we're wondering if we can just copy what we already do on web in the app.
Yeah, it's a great question. What we've seen in terms of Net Promoter Score is that it's a metric, almost like a standard metric. Hey, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely you recommend this app to a friend? But a lot of companies, what we're finding is they're typically missing the why. Why did you give it a 6 or a 7 or 8? And the problem is a lot of these brands, what they've done historically is they'll use tools like 4C or Medallia. And what they'll do is they'll put a giant survey in front of a customer that just had a potentially negative experience. And the last thing that customer wants to do when they had a bad experience was fill out an NPS survey. What they want to do first is explain what happened that was bad, and then give you a chance to fix it. So I will say NPS, while it might be an indicator that loyalty and what decisions you're making are increasing, it is not a driver. And in fact, it is a detractor from it. Because if the customer journey has been interrupted for the sake of collecting that metric, and you've interrupted a customer when they've had a potentially bad experience, you're not really doing much to help them. All you're showing that customer is you're just another data point on the NPS metric screen. Now, I'm not telling you not to do it because it is a standard metric, But what I am suggesting that is if you're going to attempt to do it in mobile, please work with Apptentive, or at least work with a company who's been doing it in mobile. Because if you do it incorrectly within mobile, you're just going to be, again, leaving a sour taste in the mouth, where everyone likes to say, I hate surveys. You don't hate surveys. You hate them when they're done wrong. And the example I gave you with Delta is an example of where it's not done right. So hopefully that helps. And I don't want to drag anyone under the water when it comes to NPS. I just want to give you an alternative that might be more successful, specific to mobile and driving loyalty.
Perfect. Thanks, Red. We had another question trickle in here. It looks like this one's actually for both. So Red, I'll start with you, then throw it over to Felipe. What different strategies should we use for users that have actually uninstalled our app?
It's interesting. I'll just say this. If you find out why customers uninstalled your app, I would proactively get in front of those customers at that point that caused them to. So if you find out people are uninstalling your app, the first thing you should do is try to figure out why, and then proactively get in touch with them before they do in the app with whatever the reason that it caused that, right? Always point to the why once you understand it. But I would actually lean back to Branch on this one for maybe follow-up techniques. Like if they uninstalled the app, you still have the web and the mobile web. And that's a great place for Branch to re-engage.
Yeah, perfect. Felipe, do you have any comments?
Yeah, so really good question. One of the difficulties with this question is that knowing when or if a user uninstalled your app is actually very difficult to know. So, tracking events that they've completed in the app, whether they still have it or not, is very important, so that when you're setting up re-engagement campaigns, whether it be through mobile web banners or through email, that you're targeting them to users that have either completed a sign up in your app in the past or completed a purchase in the app in the past. And so when you have that call to action to re-engage them, again, from web, email, or any other channel, making sure that if they don't have the app installed, that they're getting a contextual experience from whatever channel you're trying to re-engage from back into the app. And so when they arrive in the app, you can have something like a personalized experience because you've seen them in the past, saying like, hey Evan, welcome back to our travel app. Continue here to your bookings. And so making sure that it's personalized and making sure that it's targeted to users that have had your app in the past is really important.
Awesome. And then another question, Felipe, it looks like this one might be for you. You mentioned a few channels that you can optimize experiences for. So I think you talked about email, mobile web, also some virality channels. But how do you compare the performance of those channels and kind of the results? Is there a single place to do that? Or?
Yeah, so traditionally on web, it's been far easier to track performance and attribution. There's this one standard, which we all know, that's HTTP. And so it's very easy to put on parameters at the end of links, like channel equals email, and know that the user coming into your mobile web came from an email. Unfortunately, with apps, the linking technology is very fragmented between iOS, between Android, Safari browser, Chrome. And so links and attribution behave very differently depending on where users are coming from. And then there's the additional friction, which is the App Store and the Play Store themselves, which don't allow you to pass contextual data past the install process of the app. And so when the user arrives in the app for the first time, you may have no idea where they're coming from. And so a lot of companies rely on third parties to pass that contextual data from the channel into the app, and then furthermore tie that into downstream events in the app, like a sign up, like a purchase, or anything else. And so this is one of the things that Branch provides. Like I said in the beginning, we're trying to help companies unify the mobile measurement because of all of this fragmentation in the market. So we have a dashboard where you can track all of these channels and how they're performing with your downstream events in the app.
Awesome. And then one more question. It looks like this is, again, targeted towards Branch. How can we use Branch to utilize user web searches for specific travel locations to redirect into our app?
Great question. So by user web searches, I'm assuming this is an organic Google search and what you want to do is getting a user from a Google search or Bing search, whatever it may be, to your app. So what Branch does is you can list your app content with Google. The only issue is that the links themselves from Branch may not take precedence over your main domain, because I'm sure you have your own SEO and SEM strategies there. The best way I would say to use Branch to drive users from search to app is to, if they make a search, let's say for hotel New York City, and they click on a link to your website, when they arrive on your website, you can track that they're coming from Google and made the search, and show them a more aggressive call to action to your app, because you know that they made that high intent search on Google. And so one of the things you can do with Branch is show them a custom banner that says, hey, continue the experience in the app, and then the hotel in New York City result will actually show up for them through install in the app.
Sounds good. All right, so I think there are a couple more questions trickled in, but since we're running out of time, we will make sure to follow up individually on emails. Thanks so much. Red, I'll let you close it out.
All right. Well, one of the things I think would be very important is, obviously, this has been 45 minutes and there's been a lot of information. If there is any reason or any excuse you have to ask a good question to one of us, please reach out directly. This is my personal email. All right. My name really is Red, and yes, I have red hair. I get it. I will tell you right now, if you ever see me at a conference, if you ever have questions right after this, please email red@apptentive.com. I will be in Vegas next month for the MAU Vegas, the Mau Vegas Grow.co, if you're going to be out there. But also in the short term, I want to share more stories and experience about what we've done in travel. We really care about customer love. If you're having an issue with love in the App Store, if you're having an issue with love because people aren't taking your surveys, or heck, if you just want to have a funny conversation on a Wednesday afternoon, I am very open to it. So again, I've spent a lot of time talking, and now I really want to spend time listening to where we can help you the most. So with that, red@apptentive.com, and really excited to have the opportunity to reconnect for date number 2.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Red. I really appreciate your insights. And for us here at Branch, thank you everyone for attending. If you have any questions specifically kind of about Branch and you want to talk to someone, you can email accounts@branch.io and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. But thanks for everyone that came. Just as a final reminder, we will be sending out these slides and a recording of the presentation to everyone that registered and attended. All right, that's all we have. Thank you so much, guys, and we'll be in touch.